Good morning. Today, I would like to talk to you about a story that um, anybody that's gone to kindergarten, or not kindergarten, Sunday school, has probably heard several times and knows fairly well. I'm so sorry. This is my sixth or seventh video now, and I'm still just as nervous as I was the very first day I started doing this. So, apologize. I'm just trying to do what I think God is telling me to do. So, today I'm going to be talking about David and Goliath, a new perspective. I was a child when I first heard the story of David and Goliath. The story fascinated me. Learning how a small boy faced a huge giant and killed him captured my young imagination. At the same time I was being taught in Sunday school, I would spend Saturday, the day before church, watching Sunday morning cartoons. Disney had a version of Jack and the Beanstalk, and it would play fairly regularly. The giant was immense, and he was mean. This is how I saw young Goliath in my young brain. This is how I saw Goliath. That's how the brain works. We take information we already have and we fill in gaps with things that we don't fully understand. I had never seen a giant, so in my mind, David was confronting Mickey's nemesis. It's how I made sense of it. And I related to David's youth. Although now I realize that David was probably in his mid-teens when he went to visit his brothers at their army camp, during my early Sunday school years, I always pictured him being my age. When I was 5 or 6, David was 5 or 6. When I was 9 or 10, so was David. As a child, and really even as an adult, I was shorter than everyone around me. I was always at the first of the line or the end of the line when they arranged us by height. Plus, I started school early. I was only 4. That meant I was a year younger than everyone else in my class. Kids can be cruel, and when you're the youngest and the smallest, you're usually on the receiving end of quite a lot of quips, slights, and insults. Maybe this is why I loved the story of David and Goliath. The story of a smaller, younger boy not only faces someone bigger, but the older boys were afraid to face this giant, and this smaller boy wins. Maybe there was hope for kids like me. As an adult rereading and studying this underdog story, I see so much more, so much deeper than a story about a kid and a giant. Let's look at Goliath's giantness for a minute. The Evangelical Theological Society states the average height of a man during the time of David was between 5 feet and 5 feet 3 inches. That's kind of hard for us to understand today when the average height is 5'9", and almost all of us have met someone that's 6 foot tall. But imagine the average height being only 5 feet. The oldest surviving story of David and Goliath is from the Septuagint. It's referred to as the Greek Old Testament, or the translation of 70. It's the earliest Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible from the original biblical Hebrew. It's thought that this is the version used at the time of Jesus. From this translation, Goliath's height, described in 1 Samuel 17:4, is 4 cubits and a span. That would be roughly 6 feet 9 inches tall. The Dead Sea Scrolls and the oldest Greek Christian Bible also agree with this measurement. Now, I know there are some different translations, like the original English translation of the King James Version. It used an alternative text, the Aleppo manuscript, that was written in 935 AD. It lists Goliath's height as 6 cubits and a span, giving him a height of 9 feet 9 inches. That's a 3-foot difference. But most current Bible translations, mine included, list Goliath as the first of these heights, 6 feet 9 inches. And that's the height I'm going to use in today's comparison. Now, David, like I mentioned, was probably a teenager. So he most likely had not grown to his full height. So he was likely shorter than 5 foot. Can you imagine trying to face a man nearly 7 feet tall, 2 feet taller than you? And that's just the height. That would be very intimidating. Now let's look at the armor Goliath wore. It's described as weighing 5,000 shekels of bronze. That would be about 78 pounds or 35 kilos. Historians say his greaves, his boots, and his shin armor likely weighed about 15 pounds or just under 7 kilos. The head of Goliath's spear weighed 600 shekels of iron. That's about 13 pounds or just under 6 kilos. That makes the total of his armor weigh about 106 pounds or 48 kilos. That still sounds daunting to me. And remember, the average man of 5 feet 3 inches, that would be maybe his weight doubled. So if he was 110 pounds, he'd have to wear armor of the same weight or slightly under. Remember that Goliath was a warrior trained for battle, so this 106 pounds or 48 kilos was probably nothing to him. But still, I think of that 5-foot man, and it still seems too heavy to be functional. Mike and I have a close friend. He was an Army paratrooper, and he served in the Middle East. He comes to our house often, and he was here last week. I asked him about the weight of his gear. Now, he's about 5'9". He told me it wasn't unusual for his pack to weigh between 90 and 150 pounds, depending on his mission. Wow. Again, he's trained for battle, but it did help me put things into perspective. All of this shows that Goliath was truly a man whose appearance would be frightful to the average-sized Israelite man in Saul's army. But there was a man who could have been a match for Goliath. Who? King Saul. 1 Samuel 9:2 says, "From his shoulders up, he, Saul, was taller than most people." It's said by most commentaries that I've read that Saul was a little over 6 feet tall. That would put him pretty close to the 6 feet 9 inches of Goliath. As king, Saul would have the best of body armor. He would have everything made specifically to his body. So his body armor would also be comparable in quality to Goliath's. I began to wonder if Goliath's taunts were specifically directed at Saul. Every day, this giant of a man would shout, 1 Samuel 17:8-9, "Why do you come out and draw up in battle array? Am I not the Philistine, and you the servants of Saul? Choose a man and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will become your servants. But if I prevail against him, and I shall kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." The word servants in verse 8 is abed, E-B-E-D. The word has three meanings, all of which refer to a type of servant. One of these is, quote, "the people under a king, including the populace, as well as the king's officers, officials, ambassadors, and vassal kings," end quote. This seems to support the idea that the taunt was meant for King Saul. Why? When Goliath says in verse 9, "we will become your servants," he means after his defeat, Saul would then become their king, and as such, Philistines would become servants under Saul's kingship. The reverse would also be true. If King Saul were to be killed, the Israelites would then become servants to the Philistine hierarchy. My Bible is the NASB Greek Hebrew Study Bible. And I'm not saying it's a better Bible than anybody else's. It just is perfect for the way my brain works. It includes AMG's annotated Strong's Hebrew Dictionary and Greek Dictionary. It has editorial explanatory notes, maps, timelines, and other study tools. 1 Samuel 17:11 says, "When Saul and all Israel heard the words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid." In my Bible, there's an explanatory note that appears specifically for this verse. It says, quote, "Everyone knew, including Saul, that there was only one man large enough to go against Goliath, King Saul himself," end quote. We've covered a lot of background and we haven't even gotten to David yet. But I think it's really important to realize the Philistines were issuing a challenge to Israel's king. Why is that important? Because before Saul became Israel's king, God was the king of Israel. Saul was the king God gave Israel to appease the people. Saul and the army recognized Goliath's words as a challenge to Saul. While David recognized this also, he saw more. He recognized this as a taunt to the King of Kings. David finds it hard to believe no one else sees Goliath as a challenge already beaten. In verse 26 he says, "For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should taunt the armies of the living God?" Did you catch that? The armies, plural. Now, once might be a mistake, but David repeats himself in verse 36. "And this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, since he has taunted the armies," plural, "of the living God." You see, David sees more than the soldiers led by Saul as an army. David sees the armies of God standing with them. Whether he literally sees the angel army or simply knows that God has the power and has used in the past natural resources like hail, wind, rain, and fire. God has used all of these things in past battles. David knows this is a battle already won by God. David never focused on Goliath's strength. He never focused on his immense stature or even his heavy armor. David even denies the armor of Saul. Remember, we said that would be a comparable armor to Goliath's, because he knew that he couldn't function in that armor. His focus wasn't on the armor anyway. David's focus remains on God. God had delivered him before from the lion and from the bear, and David knows God will deliver him from Goliath. So he doesn't just face this giant, he charges at him. And as he's running towards him, Goliath, full of pride, conceitedly laughs at this young boy who runs at him with a stick, a sling, and a rock. We all know how the story ends. David's one stone topples and kills this enemy of God, this giant. Our world is still full of giants. We still face challenges that seem to overwhelm us into a place of fear and powerlessness. Some of these giants look like debt. Some look like being jobless. Some look like a cheating spouse or a child determined to live apart from God. Maybe your giant is depression or loneliness or drugs or alcohol. Whatever it is, the giants will keep us living in fear as long as our focus remains on our Goliath. Once we accept this isn't a battle we are meant to face alone, that God has already equipped us for success, that he has given us armies, plural, then only can we begin to move against these challenges. Once we take our eyes off of our giant and focus on God, we can begin to live in freedom. Now, this doesn't mean it'll be easy or those moments of doubt won't come. Even David put 5 stones in his pouch instead of just the one he threw. But it does mean we can face our giants with confidence. As David ran quickly towards Goliath, we can charge the conflicts we're facing. We can go armed with the knowledge that God's armies charge with us. We need to stop retreating into the worldly distractions like work, busyness, or momentary pleasures to hide from our giants. Because once those distractions are gone, our giants once again loom large before us. Don't let that giant block your view of God. Once your focus leaves God's grace, his mercy, his forgiveness, and yes, his power, the Goliaths of the world can paralyze us in fear. But if we can carry God with us, focusing on his promises, knowing he has already equipped us to not just face life's challenges, but to win, he will give you victory over them. All of us are facing a Goliath. This day, before we go into our weekend, I just pray that we would lift our eyes off our Goliath and focus them on God. Praise him for the armies he's given us. Thank him for the victory that he's already won. And then run towards your Goliath. Amen. Thank you for joining me this morning on Morning Tea with God. Thank you for watching Morning Tea with God. If you liked the video, please take a minute to hit the button below, like, subscribe, and make sure to share it with your friends. I post a new live video on Facebook every Friday morning at 9 o'clock. Please try and join me then. Thank you.